Every leader has them. Most don't know they're there. And when they show up under pressure, in conflict, when the stakes are highest, they can equally undo everything you've worked for. I am talking about your personality-based risk factors, the blind spots, habits, and patterns that derail even the most promising leaders, you, me, everybody else, okay? And you might not even know you have them. So in today's episode, my guest, Nancy Parsons, will describe 11 hidden risks that sink success and how to spot them in yourself and others and what to do before they take you down. Now, before I introduce her, I want to take a moment and ask you to reserve these dates in your calendar. The first is October 9th from 12 to 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. October 9th from 12 to 5 Eastern Standard Time, we are going to be hosting a brand new workshop, a half-day intensive called the Anti-Burnout Leadership Lab. That's right. I did a survey, and this was by far the largest, greatest interest from everybody. And so I decided to host it. The second set of dates, October 16th through November 20th, October 16th through November 20th, weekly on Thursdays from 4 to 6 p.m. Eastern. We're going to be holding a 5-week intensive on learning how to develop strategic leadership pathways. This is taking my entire strategic leadership pathway model and really squeezing it in to an intensive 5-week program instead of my usual year-long. So this is a great way to get it all chunked up. Again, this is based on the survey that I did. And if you're not on my newsletter, you're not going to hear about it first, and we're keeping it small. So more to come, but get on my newsletter so you hear it first. It's www.gotowerscope.com. And when you go there, you can get on my newsletter if you're not already there. Okay, all of that said, let me introduce our guest today, Nancy Parsons. She is the co-founder and CEO of CDR Companies, creator of the CDR three-dimensional assessment suite and 360 leader scan. And in 2020, Nancy led the launch of the award-winning True Talent Coach, which was the first digital avatar coaching platform delivering personalized debriefs and action planning to employees at all levels, not just the highest levels. So really scalable. She's also the recipient of the MEECO, M-E-E-C-O, MEECO, International Thought Leadership of Distinction in Executive Coaching. And she's the author of Women Are Creating the Glass Ceiling and Have the Power to End It, and has just put out a free ebook, which is what inspired me to bring her back on the show. The ebook is called Everyone Has Personality Risks. What are yours? And at the end, you will hear how to get access to that for free. She provides executive coaching across industries, leads strategic team development sessions, and trains coaches, including me, worldwide through the CDR Executive Coaches certification. And she is someone I aspire to be. Now, we had Nancy on the show in February 20th, 2024, so about 18 months ago or so. And that episode was called Mapping a Leadership Strategy Using Smart Assessments for Insight Building. And on that episode, she talked more generally about building self-awareness to help you with career and performance success. So now we're taking one piece of that. We're doing a deep dive into what could really derail your career plans. And that's why she's back today. Welcome on the show, Nancy.
Well, thank you. I'm delighted to be here. It's going to be a great discussion.
Yes, I'm super excited. Okay, so let's start with the fact that, like, so you've worked with thousands, I think, of leaders across industries. How is it even possible that some of the greatest leaders don't know their own leadership risks when it comes to their personality?
Yeah, well, because they're not measured. But the other thing, when you think about it, the studies for decades have shown that 50 to 75% of leaders are ineffective. The numbers are staggering, right? And there's two primary reasons for that. One is sometimes leaders aren't in the best job role. That's one. But the bigger reason is the risks are running amok because people don't know what they are. So they're showing up here and there, whenever a stress response is triggered, one or two risks show up, another time something else. So they happen without leaders thinking about it. They're these unconscious reactions that we've developed from the time we're infants on up. So
Mm,
it's just how we react in certain situations. And some risks happen with more frequency, some not much frequency, but great intensity.
mm.
So they're hard to get your arm around if you don't measure them and really get a vocabulary to understand what's happening to you.
Yeah, yeah. So let's take some examples of the continuum.
Okay.
Um, let's start with the most fun. This is going to be a really fun conversation.
Yeah, yeah,
Nancy
yeah.
has the best example. So let's start with the most egregious kind of derailer experience that you've seen. Um, what happened? What did it look like? This might give people a better picture of what we mean by risk factors or derailers.
Yeah. Yeah. The most egregious or what people think about are the abrasive or somebody losing control.
Mhm.
Excuse me. I have allergies. Maybe screaming, losing it. We had a CEO who was heading a tech energy company, and he was close to just making people run for their doors, hide. The good news was for him, he was only in the office 2 weeks and then would be out of country for 2 weeks. And they had a second in command to try to buffer and help people.
Mm,
But he was a disaster and frightened people. So he was both kind of an egotist, had low interpersonal, and also, had high hyper moody. So he had these hot buttons and
mhm,
would vocalize and, his, excuse the expression, but his F bombs were all over the place in the workplace. Okay.
mm.
Fortunately, he's moved on, sold that business, and now is not running a business. Some people, because of their risks and their overall profile, just aren't hardwired to run a business. But because they're smart and brilliant, they end up in those roles, right?
Yeah,
And with that hyper moody, is that emotional intensity up and down, losing your cool. And if you have the propensity to be outspoken, it comes out without them even thinking.
yeah, yeah. Nancy um, shared three pieces of the way that people can show up in a combination of profile factors, right? So
Right.
she mentioned egotist, she mentioned hyper moody, and she mentioned low interpersonal. And these are part of the CDR 3D assessment suite. Um, factors, character factors, as well as risk factors. And so it's not just like one risk factor, but it's how it shows up as a combination, right? So the way that she described it is if you're an egotist and then on top of that, you're also hyper moody and intense, it comes out in very, very different ways than if you didn't have that additional risk factor, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. They cluster, right? So you're hyper moody. When people have hyper moody, it sets off their other risks because they've lost control of their temperament. So
Mm,
then they go into, depending on what the stimuli is or who's pushing their button, then they react in certain ways, and so, but it's really interesting. And you don't get that many leaders that are so totally out of control as the one Peter, that I just mentioned as an example. But there are leaders who do lose it or do say things inappropriately and then try to take their words back, or they don't realize that they've offended people. We talk about the toxic workplace. Well, hello,
mhm.
risks. It's because the risk factors are just all over the place. They don't know what they are, and then there's not accountability either. So there kind of needs to be
Yeah.
coaching, understanding, self-awareness. One of our clients in medical device said the best thing for them was getting a vocabulary. So they understood, they could recognize when they were starting to go that way, they knew how to pull back because they say, oh no, I'm starting to do this, or so self-knowledge is so important.
Yeah. And I have to say that having the vocabulary as a coach and consultant, and then also sharing the vocabulary with people who might be supervising or overseeing that person
Absolutely.
also is also helpful. So I remember one time when they were having trouble. I was, called in by an executive sponsor, a C-suite, and they were having trouble with this one leader. And the leader was really like very knowledgeable, very talented, and very charismatic, but for some reason didn't get along. And people were constantly complaining about this person. And so, I had a chance to meet with that person. And I was like, check the box on grandiose, check the box on,
Yeah, yeah.
egotistical, check the box. Like I just had the language in my head. And so when I went back to the executive sponsor, I said, you may not have had the language, but have you noticed that, this leader tends to cut people off, bully people, insert themselves where, they don't necessarily belong, minimize and invalidate people. And, those are just the words. How does that feel to you when I describe, like, in one word, what is actually happening? And, they were taken aback and they're like, wow, we were giving this person a lot of leeway because we just thought like they're charismatic, they're very smart, they're probably, and I said, it sounds like you need to give some really specific feedback. Like when
Yes,
you do this, it is this. When you are cutting people off, it's belittling so that they
absolutely.
know.
Yeah. And they just think they're on a roll. They're just going. And they don't
Right,
realize in that case, and that's kind of a moving against, being too aggressive, talking over people,
right.
non-listening. And unfortunately, many leaders do that. That's a predominant, that moving against profile is what we see more frequently, right? So you're right. I mean, and until you can help them take it apart a little bit, dissect it and understand what they're doing and the impact it has on others, most important. When you do this, um, I actually like, for example, the egotist, that person that you're describing. I'm at the point now too when I'm coaching them, I just love to give them rope so that they'll show their egotism to me as I'm asking them a lot of questions.
Mm-hmm.
Then when we get there, then I say, you were you were rather condescending, or you made these statements. That was unusual. I'm here as your executive coach and you're coming across to me in this way. What are you doing on the job? If you're like pushing and trying to intimidate me, I think, this obviously is not going to be effective in the workplace with your team.
God, I would love to be a fly on the wall, Nancy, just listening to you give that kind of feedback.
But it's so funny because it's like I don't know if you've ever fished and you're throwing some line out, you're just letting them you're just letting them
They're just
survive.
biting and
Yeah,
biting.
yeah, yeah. But it's the patience. The coach has to have the patience to sit back and let it go. So then when
Yeah.
you get there, you can give them vivid examples, hold the mirror up to them and say, I'm telling you, I didn't feel good when you were talking to me this way.
Yeah.
And
Amazing.
yeah, and you have to do that with an egotist because the
Yeah.
nature of it is they think they're kind of invincible, they're great, they're better than others and smarter, but you have to let them know it's time to come down to earth. This doesn't play well, you know,
Mm.
and it's actually offensive or off-putting, you know. So I know it's terrible, but over all these years, I've kind of developed different muscles in that way,
That's amazing.
in different
That
types
that's
of.
going to be another podcast for sure, is how to speak with an egotist about their behavior.
Oh yeah,
um,
yeah.
so we are reaching an ad break. When we come back, let's sort of finish up with the egotist in particular, because there's kind of a unique aspect to it, and then let's go backwards to some less egregious sort of behaviors and risk factors that we might not catch because they're so underlying. You're
Right.
nearing an ad break here with us. You're listening to The Hard Skills with me, Dr. Mira Branco, and our guest today, Nancy Parsons. We air on Tuesdays at 5 p.m. Eastern. If you're listening or watching us right now, you'll find us on LinkedIn or YouTube at talkradio.nyc, and we'll be right back in just a moment.
Are you a conscious co-creator? Are you on a quest to raise your vibration and your consciousness? I'm Sam Leibowitz, your conscious consultant, and on my show, The Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity, we will touch upon all these topics and more. Listen live at our new time on Thursdays at 12 noon Eastern Time. That's The Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity, Thursdays 12 noon on talkradio.nyc.
Are you a high-achieving, growth-oriented leader? Are you interested in developing your authentic leadership while creating a healthy, inclusive workplace? Hi, I'm Dr. Mira Brancu, host of The Hard Skills on talkradio.nyc at 5 p.m. Eastern on Tuesdays, where we discuss how leaders develop the hard skills needed to make a greater impact. We interview experts, have live coaching, and tackle these challenges. Listen to The Hard Skills on Tuesday at 5 p.m. Eastern on talkradio.nyc.
Are you a purpose-driven individual looking for deeper healing, clarity, and growth? Welcome to the Expansion Room, a transformative space for purpose-driven individuals. I'm Siobhan Larice, host, licensed therapist, and coach. Join me every Wednesday at 5 p.m. Eastern Time on talkradio.nyc.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC. Uplift, educate, empower.
Welcome back to The Hard Skills with me, Dr. Mira Brancu, and our guest today, Nancy Parsons of CDR3 Assessment Suite and CDR Companies. And we've been deep diving a little bit into one of the 11 risk factors, the egotist. So we might as well hear about, you mentioned the egotist is part of the subset of risk factors that fall under the moving against category. There's 3 general categories that cross over with these 11 risk factors. What are the other risk factors under the moving against type? And you'll need to unmute.
Yes, we have upstager. Somebody that overtalks, as you were giving that example, somebody that talks too much and doesn't listen and jumps in. And then we have the eccentric and rule breaker. Okay, so they're all moving against, fighting back, pushing, being overly aggressive, possibly using hostile approaches to get their way. They're stubborn, they're dug in. And interestingly, over the many, many years and even, well, centuries, that's how leaders were. They were over aggressive. They were hostile. So it became natural for leaders to have these behaviors under stress. They got bossier, they got pushier, etc. And I'm smarter and have this big bravado. But that was kind of the lay of the land of leadership. So many leaders today still have that. And interestingly, so these are the things that show up under stress, right? So stress, pressure, conflict. So even when we're looking at succession planning, leaders are expected to act that way to some degree. So it's kind of accepted, even though it often shouldn't be. Does that make sense?
I feel like we are currently over socializing in that direction.
Yes.
As if it is the sign of a quote unquote strong leader to do these things.
Yes. And that's why men are promoted more than women in my research-based book that you mentioned. Women are getting overshadowed because they have the next category of moving away. So under stress, they shut down and think and want to be 100% right. Meanwhile, their male counterparts are yakking and yelling and being aggressive and saying things that might or might not be so, but they win the day in the perception battle. But that doesn't mean, and often they're not nearly as strong a leader as the women that get bypassed.
Yeah. And it is fascinating that men are more socialized to move against, right, and that is then rewarded through promotion. But women, if they try to do that move against stuff, they are then negatively judged. Instead, they are socialized to either, move away or move towards. But that is not valued as much as the moving against, or it's not rewarded as much Right.
Yeah, right. And in our research, what we found though, CEO women, not just corporate executives, CEO women had the same risks as men, which were egotists, upstagers, and rule breakers. So
Mm,
those women are moving and shaking and fighting, and they make it to those top positions. And so they're more similar, if you will, in their,
interesting.
under pressure. So they're making it through. Now, corporate executive women tended to at least have upstagers, so they didn't shut down, but they weren't egotists. But the ones who made it to the very top, what we saw was parallel to the men. So that was
Dang.
pretty surprising.
Yeah. No, now that I'm reflecting on it, that is still what you see in society as well, like in politics and stuff like that.
Yeah.
One thing I want to pull out from what you said, because I think people will miss it, is it's under stress.
Yes.
The way that we started this conversation, I mentioned like everybody has it. And so you might be thinking, I don't have none of this resonates. I don't have any of these risk factors, right? And the reality is, if you are generally a low stress person, well adjusted, not phased in most situations, you might not see these risk factors come up for a long time. So this is really like when you're under high stress, then what coping mechanisms do you use?
Right.
And so we talked a lot about the moving against. Let's talk next about the next sort of category of risk factors, the moving away.
Right.
Moving away. Now, what I was very interested in when I read your ebook is that number one, you said the detached style among them are seen among many people in STEM industries.
Yes.
And that's the crew I usually work with, and
Right,
I totally agree. That's what we see. So, what happens for? Well, let's cover all of the ones under the moving away. What are those
Yeah.
in addition to detached?
Yeah. So you have hyper moody, you have worrier, cynic, and false advocate. Okay. And I want to tell you something about, we don't intuitively think this. We think that people that are aggressive are just, burning things down. However, the detached, the moving away can be more dangerous to the organization, can be more damaging because people are holding back. When they need to be talking, they're not. They're going inside their head, they're moving away, they're isolating, they're shutting down. So those important critical discussions are not happening, or debates, dialogue to get to the right place. I see it, for example, in the energy industry. They're all STEM, so they're both detached and cynic. So when things are hitting the fan, they're not good communicators about what they're doing and what value they're bringing. They shut down when they're attacked. And that you need some give and take. You need to be able to articulate, well, we make every product in your room to some degree. We touch that in some way. I mean, I'm just saying what we saw was they lost their voice. It's because as a group, that's how they are. So they kind of hide, and they don't have enough people that will push back and articulate. But same in medical and healthcare. If they're not talking about the issues, um, it's awful. I just worked with a team, and their AI technology team, C-suite, and they were all false advocates, every one of them, right? And what was interesting when we did our team development session, they'd all been coached first, so they were self-aware. We come in and they realize this, and they're going like, oh my gosh, we never confront problems. We all go and whine to our own teams, but we never together deal with the issues up front. So they came up with a new terms of engagement, rules of engagement for each other, that they were going to express and go around and really talk about things that were on their mind that they hadn't brought up before. To start to build that muscle to learn how to be open, because they've always been so closed off.
Yeah, I love that. And so, we had started talking about like one end of the continuum is this kind of like egregious in your face. You can see it.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming the other end of the spectrum, where like it's sort of like underlying, it's not as egregious, is this style. But it sounds like what you're saying is actually just as egregious.
Yeah, and the other thing is it alienates trust, because you think somebody's you think they're with you and they're not. They're going doing something else. So we never get things hashed out at the table. It can be it can undermine the best of companies, make them fail. So it's the silent saboteur, it's happening and nobody's understanding each other and we all go do our own things and we're not walking together.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of fear with that too. Fear of failure, fear of saying the wrong thing. So getting people more comfortable, feeling psychologically safe, whatever, that's the group. And then if you have a good number of those and then you have the other ones that are very aggressive, it shuts it down. Just so you're and often, and what I have found too, some of your best thinkers, your best leaders, executives are those that are more quiet. We need them in the conversation. We need their viewpoint and their experience, but yet they kind of go away. They may be sitting there, but they're not talking.
Yeah. Yeah. And, some of the things that we, talk about when I do team development around this kind of style that helps folks who get, detached or move away or shut down, to help them understand the level of harm that it causes
Yes.
is number one. We talk about Patrick Lencioni's artificial harmony, right? Getting along just to get along does not help you function at the highest level as a team or an organization, and it undercuts your possibilities for innovation and performance. Number two, usually it comes from a good place, like you're not wanting to offend, you're not wanting to cause harm.
Right.
But if you're going to then talk about the meeting after the meeting about the meeting, then you are undermining the
Yes.
entire process,
Exactly.
right? So you're actually causing more harm by talking about each other behind each other's backs,
Absolutely.
or not addressing an issue and letting it fester and fester and fester until you just blow up.
Right, right. No. And so when people become self-aware that they're all doing this or most of them, then they can say, like if you were a false advocate, I could say, okay, Mira, what do you think? And you go, okay, that's great, Nancy. And I'm like, no, no, what do you think could go wrong? Or have you looked at it another way? I'm going to draw you out because I know your first response to me is like, I don't want to offend you and your idea stinks, but I'm not going to tell you that, you know. But this
Right.
way, we learn how to talk to each other, that we just don't take that head nod or kind of, compliance versus tell me what you really think. How can we make this product better or this service?
That's
You
right. Now, in order to receive that and make me feel safe, I would need to have you as my team member who's drawing me out, then not hold a grudge for me opening up and sharing that I have a difference of opinion, right?
Absolutely. Oh, yeah, you have to value it because we need it. That's the whole point. And so I have teams actually work through the risks together. They have to talk
Oh,
about how it's shown up on the team, actual examples, and what has been the
amazing.
impact, what was the toll. And now the brainstorming happens of what are we going to do differently? So they have to come up with behaviors. The thing is, too, and I know you saw this in the book, but you have to practice those new behaviors too. Because if you tend to go quiet and shut down, even though cognitively you go, okay, I won't shut down anymore. Yes, you will. Unless you start practicing and have some little, notes with you and practice when it's safe away from the controversy and learn what I call just some pivot phrases. How can I jump in that conversation in a way that keeps me safe, but I'm heard, that I can be
Mhm.
heard? Oh,
Yeah.
Mira, that has some merit. I haven't given enough thought yet. But have you also considered this? Well, if I say that, then I'm not offending you, and I'm not being unkind. Does
Yes.
that make sense?
Yes.
So in the book,
Great.
we have a lot of pivot phrases and ideas for people. And you only need 3 or 4 pivot phrases really to get you going to practice with it. And that is if you're any of the moving away, false advocate, worrier, especially worriers, because they don't want to jump in unless they're 100% right, you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
and getting them to say, it's okay. Yeah. And to even say, I haven't thought this through fully, but at this point, I'm thinking about this. So I give myself permission to be wrong, right? Or be partway right. So
Love it. Love it. Okay, we are reaching yet another ad break. I don't know how, but we're just getting started. When we come back from this ad break, let's move into the final grouping of the risk factors moving toward.
Yes.
So you're listening to The Hard Skills with me, Dr. Mira Brancu, and our guest today, Nancy Parsons, and we'll be right back in just a moment.
Misalignment within your sales team or with a client stalls deals and creates unnecessary friction for you and the client, resulting in up to 37% lower win rate. If you're in pre-sales, sales, sales management, or sales enablement, and you'd like to increase revenues, win rate, margins, client satisfaction, and stay competitive, this show is for you. Hi, I'm Art Fromm, host of the Making Seamless Sales Show. Please join me live Thursdays at 7 p.m. Eastern on talkradio.nyc.
Hey everybody, it's Tommy D, the nonprofit sector connector, coming at you from my attic. Each week here on talkradio.nyc, I host the program Philanthropy in Focus. Nonprofits impact us each and every day, and it's my focus to help them amplify their message and tell their story. Listen each week at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time until 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on talkradio.nyc.
Hi, I'm Linda Marsanico. The A Train to Sedona is a memoir about my journey to love and compassion. It's also the name of my new broadcast on Wednesdays at 12 noon. When we are spiritual, we embrace possibilities and ideas, which strengthen our mind, body, spirit, health, and wisdom. On the A Train to Sedona broadcast, I plan to interview guests who embrace these expansive practices. Join us on Wednesdays at 12 noon on Talk Radio New York City.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC at www.talkradio.nyc. Now broadcasting 24 hours a day.
Welcome back to The Hard Skills with me, Dr. Mira Brancu, and our guest today, Nancy Parsons. Okay, Nancy, so let's move into the last category, moving toward, there are only a couple in here, but I want to start with one of them, which is perfectionism, because when I read in your book that you wrote, most people assume that leaders are more likely to derail due to toxicity or abrasiveness, but perfectionism is the more common reason for derailment. I thought that was absolutely fascinating. So I would love to hear more about how this is so, and then we'll get into the other ones under the moving toward. And you'll have to unmute again.
Perfectionism. It is surprising because we think, people that are detailed, etc. But as they go to higher levels, particularly C-suite, it doesn't work. So they tend to have what we call high prudence and high perfectionism inside their strengths, but under risks, they're usually above 90 in their risks. And maybe they have worrying and cynic too, but primarily it's the perfectionism. I have seen CEOs, CFOs, several CHROs derail and others due to perfectionism. They can't let go. They micromanage. They're making decisions 5 levels down. I was coaching a CEO in Canada in retail pharmacy, and he was requiring all his execs to give him reports every day, even on weekends, all the time. And I said, George, you have to stop this. You're getting complaints. It's not working. This is high level, and this is across all of Canada. And he said, but I want the information I need it. I said, why do you need it? He's like, because then I know what's going on. I said, you can't do it. At this level, you can't do it. He wouldn't stop. He was let go. You can't do that. I think I might have, in the book, I had a CHRO who actually, we were doing a program, Authentic Leadership, and she's like, don't even use a bellman because we don't want to pay the tip. Seriously. And I'm like, we're using the bellman. I get boxes, but I mean, these little things, it sounds silly, but she's doing that with her people too. She was like, and so what happens is sometimes people are great individual performers, as you know, but they're not well suited for leadership when they're that perfectionistic. And so because they're too detailed, they can't let go. They're not strategic. And I'll be honest with you. they are the hardest for me to coach to be successful because it's almost like that obsessive compulsive behavior. And I think it almost takes therapy, which I don't do. I do executive coaching. And it's because, they're ingrained behaviors and that's their go-to. The other thing they're so controlling. I've had to let go clients because they want to get in designs and everything too much where they call, or you charge them more because they're making you redo work. You know what I'm saying? So they can be annoying as clients. The other thing that really hurts them too, and this is what we see, especially with our new digital avatar coach, right? They're risk aversive. Oh my goodness. They are policy procedure people. We don't deviate, we don't change. So unfortunately, I've written a couple articles too on the HR profiles. They tend to be high perfectionist, high worrier. So they're not as strategic as they need to be. So, it's really, and it's tough, with all this technology and AI and everything else. How do we communicate and help these folks feel comfortable? Because they're not. Now, they're not all derailing. I'm talking about the ones that are super high.
Yeah.
But we're seeing still those trends and they're hard to work with. So the people in the HR technology or coaching space, they all tell me, my peers, we do workarounds. We can't work with HR because they just stop everything because they're uncomfortable. But anyway, yeah, so you can just see it is surprising. I went through my files and I have like 10 that have derailed. And same with you, I hadn't really been adding it up, but it's truly these people that are rigid, they can't adapt, they're controlling, and they want it done their way too. You don't have any latitude.
Why is it that the folks with the moving against, and especially egotists and upstagers, why don't they derail as often? Or what is it that sort of like protects them?
That's a great question because normally they're more manipulative. And they see it coming. They're not going to wait. The perfectionist is just going to stay in there steady as you go, steady as you go. But the person that's aggressive typically is more, a little more imaginative, all these other things. They're going to be, more. So they read the tea leaves. They know, but you'll see them if you look at their resumes usually 1 to 2 years, they're in a new role because they jump ship before they're let go. So they very seldom are caught up in that, because they're brighter than that and they're moving along and they're hitting a new target.
Got it. So we don't call it derailing only because they move themselves out of the role into something else.
They pre-derail. So they jump and they move more frequently, but they create often much more damage. So to your point, it doesn't mean that this is cool and okay. It's not. And and you'll recall, I mean, we have some even dangerous profiles in terms of undermining and stalking or stealth situations in organizations. So they're meanwhile, if they can do real damage to an organization. So that's why having assessments like this at the front end, even before you onboard and certainly before you promote, and then always for development is so important because here's the other thing, and I was just thinking about it. Some of these people too that are the manipulative moving against at times, they can also be the most charming and charismatic. You don't see it coming, right? So
yeah.
So
yeah, and what I'm reflecting on right now as you're talking is both, like, even if they're not derailing, right? Both of these types can cause psychological damage.
Absolutely.
So whether you are overtly manipulating people and charming people and sort of making things work out for yourself, which is, can cause, a lot of psychological damage for your team members, or you are, micromanaging to the point where your team feels like you're on top of them, stifling them, not trusting them. That also is psychologically damaging to them. So both is toxic. Like, we think of toxic only as the sort of in your face abrasive, but both are really toxic.
Right. And that moving away is more abandonment. It's not toxic. It's abandoning your team and your responsibilities in your business because you've shut down. You've isolated.
I'm glad that you mentioned that because that is what I'm trying to coach around now as a preventative, a proactive measure. I did it during COVID and I'm doing it again now, where this subset of people are not realizing that they're shutting down, but they're saying like, I don't have information, so why have town halls? Well, your people need to see you present and stable and consistent. That's
Right.
they need to feel stable because they feel unstable, and you not showing up because you don't have all the answers does not help at all. Right? That is the kind of shutting down, shutting out that is they're not realizing the effect that has on people right now, and in uncertainty and instability.
Right. And, and with this, if we know we're working with a group of STEM or people who are quiet, then the development needs to be around those issues and how to communicate and why it's so important. And whether you're doing one-to-one coaching or you're doing team training or whatever, you've got to have them work through it and come up with ways and like you said too earlier, understand the impact of when you're not doing this.
Yeah. Well, let's now start like applying this in different ways. Let's say a leader identifies, one of these derailers or gets some, like assessment from you. What's one step that they could take to start preventing it in the future from happening it again?
Okay. So in the book, I actually have a template they can use, or we can always email it out too. It's a little matrix they fill out. What do I think? What is my risk? Okay, so maybe I think I'm a false advocate. When's the last couple times it showed up? And you're going to write down a couple of examples. What was the consequence of or what triggered it? What caused me to have this reaction? Well, Bob was too pushy or whatever. So you write that down. So you little matrix. The consequence. What was the result of me not speaking up when I should have? Maybe we made the wrong decision. We went the wrong way and it was a disaster. And then the real money is we have the whole thing. What can I do differently? And coming up with actual action plans. And they don't need to be lengthy, just some behavioral shifts, what I call little pivots to help us in those tough moments. But now, since I know it, and I know when Bob comes in the room and I know he's maybe blustery and all this other stuff, I'm going to have a plan because I'm anticipating I normally go quiet. But I'm not going to go quiet because I do have a plan and I've practiced what I can say to jump in the conversation. See, so you're going to increase your batting average. You're going to do better. You're going to start recognizing, number one, what triggers me? What's the stimuli that causes me to go there? And keep in mind, one of the other things is sometimes you have risks that are contrary. I can give a personal example of an upstager and I'm detached. You think, how can that be?
Mm-hmm.
It's different stimuli. Different things that happen cause me to maybe talk too much, that I have to pull back. Other things, maybe if my feelings are hurt or I'm getting under pressure too much, I just shut down and go away and I don't talk to people. I know you find that shocking, Mira, but it's true.
I find it absolutely shocking. Yes.
Frequency is upstager, right?
Yes.
But intensity, like my husband knows if something's wrong because I don't talk, right? Something has gone. No, but I'm just saying. So it's not always just too much of a strength or the opposite of a strength. Sometimes we have these unusual risks of the 11 that come out that don't seem to have any pattern. So I just want to let you know it's like an anomaly, but it's there.
Yeah, no, I mean, when I took this assessment the first time, I was shocked about the false advocate. It didn't make any sense whatsoever to me because usually, I mean, people call me the truth teller. Like usually I just say, hey, I don't like that. Or, here's my opinion, even if you don't want it or didn't ask, Yeah. And so I didn't make any sense, but because of the fact that, I was sort of like explained, this is what it looks like. This is what could happen. It's under high stress. I started looking for it. And looking closely, when does it happen? And it's definitely under very specific circumstances. Yeah. And now that I, know it's there, I know what to do with it and when it's going to come on. Like, this is what I want to do. I better not because, that's a derailer, right? So it is incredible, I'm just saying, like, even for people like you who have created an assessment, and know the ins and outs, and me, like, as a clinical psychologist who have had billions of tests done on me, so much insight, reflection, coaching on me, therapy on me, blah, blah, blah. There are still surprises you can have about yourself when you take these assessments. So we're reaching an ad break. I just realized that we never got to the last risk factor under this moving towards. So when we come back from the ad break, we're going to get to that last one and then a little bit more practical tips again. You're listening to the Hard Skills with me, Dr. Mira Brancu, and our guest today, Nancy Parsons, and we'll be right back.
On Frank About Health, we're not just talking healthcare. We're managing disruption and innovation. Over the last 4 years, I've taken you from epilepsy and COVID to mental health, caregiving, and now the front lines of healthcare transformation. Stay tuned for a healthier future as we bring on the innovators, professionals, storytellers, and advocates who show you how to own your healthcare every Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern Time on talkradio.nyc.
Ready to serve up success with a splash? Hi, I'm Bruce Kramer, aka the corporate cockroach.
I'm the Renaissance woman, Angie Snowball.
And I'm your strategy doctor, Dr. Navtej Desange, inviting you to serving up success with a splash.
Join us as we shake things up with real talk and real strategies centered around awareness, action, and accountability.
And yes, there really is a cocktail involved. Please join us and sip your way to success.
Serving up success with a splash, where wisdom meets happy hours. Cheers!
Cheers.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC at www.talkradio.nyc. Now broadcasting 24 hours a day.
Welcome back to the Hard Skills. So we talked about moving against. The moving against categories include the risk factors: egotist, upstager, eccentric, rule breaker.
Right.
We talked about the moving away category: hyper moody, worrier, cynic, false advocate, detached. 5 of them. The last one is moving toward, and there's really only 2. We talked about perfectionism.
Right.
What is the last one?
The last one is pleaser. Okay. And so seeking approval, wanting approval, especially upwards from a boss, but it can play out with peers and even direct reports too. So this is the person that doesn't set boundaries, can't say no, kind of that yes person. They're helpful to a fault at their own expense. There are many women who have it. There are men who have it too. I've coached a CEO who's had it. Okay. So a man who was CEO. So but more predominantly, we see it like in executive assistants. They jump through hoops for everyone and they don't take care of themselves. And they're often working too many hours, burning out with your next subject. They burn out. So they're the ones that really do need the assertiveness training. How do I learn to say no? And now, they're often absolutely great employees. They work really hard. They're great, but what I always tell them too, if I'm coaching them, don't work for an egotist or at least one with low interpersonal, because they will take advantage of a pleaser, right?
Mm-hmm.
So making sure they have to be selective about their work culture, where they're working, that they have a good boss and a good team, so that they have to learn how to not be so, self-sacrificing.
Yeah. Also, I mean, the other downside that I see, especially if you're in a leadership role, is that you are likely to say yes to all the things that your supervisor asks of you, then also somehow say yes or please your supervisees, but sometimes they are at attention or misalignment, and sometimes you need to stick up for yourself with your boss. Sometimes you need to be hold people more accountable, and it starts feeling, even though non-intentional, undermining when you keep saying yes to everything, but in fact you can't meet everybody's needs.
Right.
employees are most likely to feel frustrated with that kind of.
Exactly. It comes off as a lack of courage, a lack of standing up. And we expect our leaders to have some courage.
Right.
So,
And
so
decision ability.
it's one of those risks that really hold people back, where they're viewed as not leader-like when they're a pleaser. Yet they could have, on their strengths, they could have great potential. So it is one that they can work on, and I think make good progress. Everyone's going to slip every now and then. We have these risks, but if they're aware of it and they really work on being more assertive and having their pivot phrases where they can, and setting boundaries, they can make inroads for sure. But most people don't realize they're doing it. They know they just care, so they care so much, they want to work so hard, and then sometimes they're not having time for themselves, their families, and their life is very stressful because they can't set those proper boundaries.
Yeah. And from a psychological perspective, these 11 risk factors that fall under the 3 categories, moving against, moving away, moving toward, right, are coping strategies that we learn to succeed, survive, and based on the feedback that we get as in early life. And if you caught it, moving against is like fight, moving away is like flee and freeze, and moving toward is like the fawn. When we have trauma responses or extreme stress and threat, we fight, we flee, we freeze, or fawn. We don't hear about fawn a lot, but the fawning is like the Stockholm syndrome. Like, you bring people in to protect yourself. Right. And so all of this is just us learning healthier habits over time about how to engage under conflict. Right.
Yes. And stress, or even if we're tired, sometimes we'll resort to these things when we're not at our best. And this actually does go back to, we actually thought about calling it the ineffective coping strategies, but we thought that's too kind of psychobabble. So, but it goes back to Karen Horney's work in the 1950s of, how we react under stress and conflict, the reactions. So we do the factor analysis of the 11, and we have those 3 coping strategies.
That's right. It's how we attach or detach from people. Right. And, so as we are closing out, Nancy, if you could give leaders one sentence to remember in the heat of the moment so that they can catch themselves or do something, what would that be?
Breathe, pause and breathe. When you start to feel that the animation going up, the emotional rise or discomfort, if you can take the sound, I know it sounds silly, 3 deep breaths in and out slowly, it will resettle you. You will be able to think again. We stop kind of thinking and we react. So if we can pull back a little on that immediate emotion, and even there's others, get up and get a glass of water, whatever, but somehow take time out for yourself in that moment. Pause.
Yeah. Get a separation between the event and what you're going to do about the event.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly. And notice it. Notice when I'm feeling pushed or somebody's, getting on to me. How do I react, and how can I pull that back a little bit? How can I be more thoughtful versus reactive?
Excellent. How can people find out more about your work and CDR companies and what it offers?
Yes. So our website is cdrassessmentgroup.com. And if they want the free book, the ebook on all the 11 risks, it's under our books section. You'll see a tab for books. We have tons of articles too, probably over 100 articles on all these different risks and so forth on the website as you go through the blog and other things. So there's plenty of resources there. You can always email us at, my email is nparsons@CDR Companies, or just order at CDR Companies if you want to reach just one of our folks. I'm on LinkedIn. You're welcome to link with me and ask me any questions, and I'm happy to help if I can.
Awesome. So, audience, what did you take away from today? And more importantly, what is one small change you can implement this week based on what you learned from Nancy? She's given you a lot to work with here. So share it with us, any insights that you've gotten on LinkedIn. She mentioned she's on there. I'm on there. Nancy Parsons is Nancy, Parsons. And share it with us at talkradio.nyc as well, so we can cheer you on. We are also on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Twitch, Apple, Spotify, Amazon podcasts, all over the place. So if today's episode resonated with you, please share it with a colleague or leave a review. And if you're looking for more personalized support or leadership and team coaching, you could definitely hang out with Nancy at cdrassessmentgroup.com and check her services out. And you could also head out to www.gotowerscope.com to schedule a consultation with me. The stuff that I like to talk about on the show is part of my research-based strategic leadership pathway roadmap that I use to help socially conscious organizational misfits on their leadership journeys. And you could also check out my books, Millennials Guide to Workplace Politics, or the workbook version, and or our Leadership Academy, a social impact leadership learning community. I did mention that we have a workshop that's coming up that is the Anti-Burnout Leadership Lab on October 9th, 12 to 5 p.m. Eastern. Put it in your calendar now. And or the accelerator, the TowerScope Leadership Academy accelerator, that teaches you everything about my roadmap from October 16th through November 20th. It's going to be weekly on Thursdays from 4 to 6 p.m. Eastern. Hold on to those dates, because we're going to be announcing it soon. And that's going to be in the newsletter first. We're offering it to newsletter subscribers first. So get on the newsletter at gotowerscope.com. I want to thank talkradio.nyc for hosting. Together, we will navigate the complexities of leadership and emerge stronger on the other side. Thank you for joining me and Nancy Parsons today on this journey. This is Dr. Mira Brancu signing off. Until next time, stay steady, stay present, and keep building those hard skills muscles. Thanks, everybody. Take care.